This is Eitan Weinstein.
And I'm Naor Menninger, and you're listening to Two Nice Jewish Boys.
This podcast is made in collaboration with the Jewish Journal. Check them out at jewishjournal.com. Also in collaboration with Arutz Sheva, israelnationalnews.com. And last but not least, in collaboration with Australian Jewish News, check them out at ajn.timesofisrael.com. If you'd like to support the podcast, visit 2njb.com/donate. 2 months ago, against the backdrop of a global pandemic, a subsequent economic crisis, and a prime minister accused of corruption, thousands of Israelis decided to hit the streets. Gathering in Jerusalem, right next to the prime minister's residence, they had one goal in mind. Benjamin Netanyahu must resign. His failure in handling the health and economic crises and his questionable legal standing means one thing: he's got to go. These protests continue today both in Jerusalem and across the country. Many Israelis criticize the protests for being unfocused, for exploiting global and national instability to secure political objectives, and for being unruly and sometimes even violent. On the other hand, these protesters themselves claim to be the victims of both police and civilian violence, and in fact, we have seen that. As usual, Israel ain't a walk in the park. Joining us today is a former guest of the podcast, the journalist and activist Maya Rimmer. Maya is a participation specialist and group facilitator who took part in the 2011 protests in Israel and is currently one of the voices that's calling for change. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you guys for having me.
So,
from a distance.
2 meters. This is more than 2 meters.
Yeah, we're being
We're
safe.
extra cautious.
Yeah, yes.
We follow the rules. You see? I'm following the rules.
Yeah. For a denier, that's very impressive.
Noor thinks I'm a denier.
So, what do you want?
What do I want?
Yes.
A future in this country.
And you don't have a future in the country?
I don't see a future in this country at the moment. My economic situation is very bad. I have to rely on my parents again, things that I haven't done since my early 20s.
And before Corona?
Before Corona, I was doing much better. Yes, before Corona, things were going well for
Everybody took a hit, especially
no doubt,
freelancers.
No doubt. I don't doubt the fact that it's a global crisis. I'm pointing to the fact that while me and my friends are moving out of our apartments, having less money to feed families, while this is happening, the Prime Minister is asking for a tax relief of 1 million shekels. I doubt the fact that his ministers sit there in television studios saying that nobody's hungry. That's bullshit. That is detached people that are not understanding what's happening in their country. That's the main call of these protests. You guys are detached. You are irrelevant. You don't understand what is happening to the people. Why does my leadership not represent me? Why does Benjamin Netanyahu not want to take care of me? Why is he fighting for his tax exemption and not for our survival, our economic survival?
But he should represent the entire people, but in the end, he was voted in by certain people, and he represents them.
Sorry?
A few months ago.
Yeah, but he was voted in by those people, and he represents them. I mean, that's
so it makes sense.
That's how a democracy works, no?
So it makes sense for him to only try and take care of his base and hate monger and tell, there was a sign posted on the front of the residency a few days ago saying leftists are traitors. What happens in our country when someone is called a traitor? We know. We were there. We've heard of Rabin. How is that?
Well, Bogi Alon called Netanyahu a traitor.
That's really, really not a good idea. I'm not a spokesperson for Bogi Alon, and I think that a lot of the politicians today, I don't think Bogi or Gantz or Yair Lapid are the answer to Benjamin Netanyahu. I think our leadership is corrupt. I think the system is ruled by money, and I think that the way things are going, they're deteriorating. I think that the protests that we're seeing today they can't be summed up into Bibi go home. That's a reduction of it, and it's not seeing the complexity, which is one of the reasons that I was really happy and excited by your invitation here to have a more complex conversation about the situation, because we all want a future, right? it's not just about Bibi. It's not just about Benjamin Netanyahu. It's about the fact that young people here don't see a future, don't see an economic future. They don't see.
It's a generalization.
It's a massive generalization, and it's the voice that is coming from the street. It's the
Is
thousands.
it though?
It fully is. I'm there. That is the voice that's coming out.
But only 10,000, 15,000 people are demonstrating, whereas you have hundreds of thousands of young people who are not. So
Okay, so let's look at some facts. One fact is that 15,000 is not a true number. There were at least 30,000 a few consecutive weeks. That's just in Jerusalem, in front of Balfour. Other than that, you have 300 bridges all over Israel where you have hundreds of people coming out locally, wherever they are, to say, to be part of this protest, of this movement. Then you have people abroad. We've seen protests everywhere. San Francisco, New York, Amsterdam, Berlin. People are coming out of their cushy lives, living abroad, and actually going out on the streets and protesting. And this is during a COVID crisis where people like my father don't dare leave the house and come and protest. There are many people that are that are scared to come out, scared of the violence that's been bestowed upon us, scared of people on the street stabbing people for protesting. This is not alleged. This is not what we claim. You know this. We know this.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, there was.
People chased.
There were a few, just to fill people in. There were in Tel Aviv a few weeks ago. There were some protesters that were
Hoodlums.
attacked, and a bottle was broken over one of their heads.
There were also leftist protesters.
There was just now someone who was stabbed in the neck, right? Recently, a week ago.
A few weeks ago. Almost every week we see some act of violence.
But on the other hand, there were also earlier than that. There was a policeman whose leg was broken, right, in a protest.
And Channel 13 correspondent Avishai Ben Chaim, who was chased by leftist protesters who threatened his life and told him horrific things.
Guys, that's really painting it in the wrong light. I feel that you're going off talking points that politicians have been saying, and let's take some.
We could say the same to you, so let's not.
Okay. Yeah. So
what's terminology?
Why is it inaccurate to say there's violence on both sides?
Fair. Take your point. I just want to try and take these things apart.
Okay.
It's not legitimate for anyone to be violent against a journalist, against people, against a police officer. I don't condone that. I don't accept that. The police officer whose legs were broken, and I think that's a really, really bad thing that happened, he was an undercover officer who in the middle of a protest grabbed a girl and tried to take her away. People around her...
It's his job.
That's fine, but people around her didn't know he's a policeman. They saw a protesting woman in a very violent situation because there was a lot of anger there that was suddenly hurried away to the side, so they tried to protect her. Once they did know he was an officer, there were protesters who tried to protect him. So yes, it's still a bad event that happened that shouldn't have. But I think that saying you were breaking the legs of officers, I think that's a miscommunication. I feel that's not accurate. I have been in a situation where I am scared to walk to my car and from my car in Jerusalem. Me and friends of mine have been beaten up for walking in a non-violent protest. We've seen the escalation of violence, and I agree with you, and I'm going to take responsibility for the fact that at the beginning, the protests were violent from both sides. There was also violence from the protesters. I myself asked a few people, don't throw that plastic bottle at the horse. Don't do that. That's uncool. We don't do that. What's really beautiful to see is that with time, without laws from within us, the culture is changing. After these things happened, we spoke more and more and had circles and had trainings around non-violent conflict. And more people started showing up with meditation, with flowers, with a different energy. And you've seen that go away. You've seen that disappear. So I agree there was violence within the protest at the beginning. That's moved away. That doesn't happen anymore. So it's important also to see the growth and the changing of a protest movement.
I want to go back because you said so many things earlier and I wanted to address them and then we moved on. So first of all, when you said about it, I felt you're contradicting yourself a little bit when you said that it's about us feeling there is no future, but then you say about the San Francisco Israelis who earn like amazing sums in the high-tech industry there and they go and demonstrate. So that kind of I don't know, undervalues the whole, like if you're showing off of that I wouldn't be so proud if they were, because what do they have to demonstrate about? So that's, you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I think that our future is not just made of the economy. It's not just about, can I buy a house here? Can my business flourish here? It's also about the democracy. It's about feeling like this country represents me and wants me here and doesn't see me as a foreign agent that is a traitor and should be beaten up on the street. I feel that people living abroad, doesn't matter how much money they're making. I feel that a lot of them, like a lot of us here, are truly frightened of the fascist downswing we're seeing, of more and more laws being enacted that challenge the balance of power, of more and more things that are taking away human rights and civil liberties, and that's a big part of our future as well.
You're saying words like fascist, like you look at Belarus. That's fascism. That's dictatorship.
Sure.
And where are they and where are us? Like that's completely different. I think it's so obvious.
So let's get into specifics, because there are. Well, I'm not gonna probably join you on the streets. I do have grievances, and we should talk about why I think the difference is, like why some people choose to take their grievances to the streets and shout about it and protest, and the other and like where's that line, I guess. But if we want to talk specific, there was a law passed, right, where the government can make certain executive actions without any parliament approval, meaning without actual democratic process and just the approval
law
of the government. And then no, but I mean they can make any decision basically.
And they don't just use it for Corona, like the peace accord that is being put together right now with the United Arab Emirates. A, that's amazing. Well done, Bibi. I think that's great. B, that was done without consulting the foreign minister or any of the government ministers. It's one man, again, deciding what is good for our whole nation, disregarding his political partners, the opposition, the parliament.
They can quit the government if they're unpleased.
No, but generally foreign policy, I would say, is a matter that
You don't think the foreign minister should be involved in foreign policy?
He can, but I'm saying that in general, the prime minister leads the government, and the government can take certain actions like that, like foreign policy, like treaties and peace accords and things like that. They do eventually have to
be ratified.
seek approval, right, in Parliament or in Congress in the United States. It's the same with like declaring war, taking military action, right? Mm-hmm. You can take a certain action, but you can't remain in a certain place. So I think but it does frighten me that in the end there was a law passed that, and the irony of it that the law was passed because the idea was that in a time of crisis there's not enough time to pass legislation, and they passed the legislation in like an hour. So there is certain
a lot
problems.
of irony. There's a lot of irony in our leadership right now.
Protesting on that.
We're completely also protesting on that. Part of the no future that I see is the fact that the democracy that we have established in our 70 plus years is being demolished from within.
If they rolled back this law, you would stop protesting?
Of course not.
Yeah,
of course not.
It's very.
Can I speak a bit more about why we're protesting? Because
sure.
I feel we went right into it. Because
I have to say that I thought you said I was doing a reduction. I thought I was doing you guys a favor, because one of the criticisms, as we mentioned, is that these protests are super like all over the place.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a movement, and I'm gonna give you the chance to kind of explain. I feel like there's this. Sometimes one of the best tactics is when you have criticism, thrown at you, to embrace it and try to turn it around. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's what it is. But I'm saying, I thought, so often we've seen protests and people go to the streets with unclear demands and unclear claims, and then it just kind of dissolves and dissipates. Mm-hmm. So what is the protest about?
Thank you for the question. Thank you, guys. 2 levels. First level, as we've spoken about, is Bibi go home. Okay? You realize there are kids today that are studying for their bar mitzvah that have no concept what it's like to have a leader other than Bibi. We have a leader who has 3 indictments against him, who's taken us into 3 elections in the past year and a half. That's almost banana republic style, okay? That's definitely not solid leadership. We have a leader whose family is very involved in government, whose son speaks up and in a very, very rude and horrible way, like This is about Bibi. I'm putting this aside because I don't feel that's my main goal, personally. There's a bigger thing happening in Balfour, and it's worthwhile seeing that there are different groups there. This is a decentralized protest. So part of the movement, part of the people that started these protests are the very well-known, well-established Prime Minister, Black Flags. These are the older people. They're 60, 70-year-olds. They've been in the streets for 4 years trying to oust Netanyahu. I am not a part of that movement. I'm not a part of the Black Flags. I'm a part of the Pink Bandanas. Pink Bandanas started on the 14th of July in a protest called Bibistilia for Bastille Day. And it's when thousands, started with hundreds and then building up to thousands of young people came out onto the streets demanding a whole variety of things. And you're right, it's not one thing, but there is a very clear umbrella of consciousness in this decentralized protest saying, we refuse to be stuck in this paradigm of we have no choice but all these really, really bad options. I refuse to play this game of Bibi or Gantz. No, that's not the reality I want to live in. I want to live in a reality where the leaders actually listen. They actually care about us, where they actually give us money we've been paying into social security and taxes when we are in deep crisis. That when we have, they dealt very well with the first wave of the COVID. Seriously, I was surprised by how much I agreed with their policies. I was very much satisfied with the way they handled it. And then instead of preparing for the next wave, Bibi went off and started taking care of his legal affairs, hate-mongering, considering going into another election, and taking care of his tax exemption instead of doing what needs to be done. Mm-hmm. So it's a bigger thing here of wanting new options, wanting to be in conversations with intelligent young people like yourselves, where we've been told for so long that we are on opposite sides, but we have so much in common that we want to change.
But I think that the tactics are maybe, I think there's also probably more grievances because, if you look at the pictures, there's so many different signs being held up from, and the occupation, Bibi go home.
Ode to Prime Minister.
Ayman Ode for Prime Minister, which I think would be kind of in line with Ayman Ode.
The leader of the Arab Joint List.
Ayman Ode I haven't seen that. Okay.
Several.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of different signs we can get.
Justice for Iyad al-Khalek and Salomon Taka.
And the gas deal.
Police brutality is a really, really big issue that's been coming up a lot since...
Wait, because...
Well, I made the symbol, the gesture for go on, but
took it back.
Okay.
Because otherwise I want to address the things he said.
Please
because I disagree. I disagree with many of the things. Let's put the whole anti-Bibi thing aside because you say it's not your main goal.
It's not my main goal.
I think it also can be addressed so easily. There were elections. All the things you said, everybody knew, and people chose him anyway. And he's prime minister. So I think, yeah.
Okay, one of the main talking points saying democracies don't change leaders on the streets; they change them in the polls. I can address that if you want.
Yes, please.
I feel that this concept of it's not okay to be protesting someone who was just elected, and that's not how democracies work.
It's not okay. It's just futile.
Okay, so here is where my notebook comes in because I knew this would be one of your talking points.
Okay.
In the 70+ years,
it's not a talking point. That's not fair. It's a belief.
You're right. I'm sorry. I've just heard this so much that it's so many people repeat it that it's really frustrating because it's untrue. You're right. I'm sorry for saying it.
But I don't think the point also is that you can't protest. It's just that
that you don't change the government through protesting.
Like you said.
Yeah, that's untrue. Okay. And let me say why. Okay. In the past 70 years, 6 prime ministers in Israel have resigned as a result of public pressure. So by percentages, most of our prime ministers didn't come into power through the polls, didn't resign, didn't finish their term. Thank you.
Wait, can we get into that?
Yeah, of course. I can give you examples. So Golda Meir, after Yom Kippur War, she was voted in a month before, and then there was mass protesting because she handled Yom Kippur very badly, just like Bibi handled Corona very badly. So a month...
3,000 people didn't die in Corona yet, but...
And hopefully they won't.
Hopefully.
I agree. And yet the mass amounts of poverty that's coming up is going to get even much worse.
And in the entire Western world.
Okay, so Golda Meir is an example of someone who resigned because of public pressure. And then we have Begin, who after the Lebanon war resigned because of public pressure and because of a bad mental state that he was because of the Lebanon war. Rabin resigned because Leah Rabin there was some corruption there.
Bank account mistakes.
There was.
But there were no demonstrations about that.
No, but it's not about demonstrations. It's about public pressure. When is it okay to put? It's always okay. But the concept of a prime minister can resign because of public pressure. More and more, Barak, after the failure of Camp David and the Second Intifada started, there was calls for him to resign, public pressure, protests. He resigned. Olmert resigned in exactly the same situation. There were indictments for corruption against him. At first, he was emboldened in his point that he doesn't need to resign. Bibi went on an interview that we see again and again. Netanyahu said, you have to go home if you're indicted. And so he went home. Again and again, this works, and this is just from Israel.
But that doesn't
There's
mean
more
anything
example from the
because
words.
we don't say, it's not that we say that it's technically impossible to overthrow a government through demonstrations. Of course, it's always possible. But I don't think first of all, I don't think it's relevant because I don't think demonstrations like in 2011, you had the biggest demonstration in the history of Israel, and Bibi didn't resign. So
we've learned. We've learned.
Well, have you? I don't know. Let's see.
No, but I think the point is that it's whether or not it's possible is not the question here. Whether or not it's legitimate, I think, is the question, right? Because in the end, that's why there is democracy, so that everybody can go to the voting booth, to the ballot box, and to put their choice in. And hold on. And to put their choice in, and for the leader to come to decide, for the nation to decide which leader they would like to lead them. So, like, protests can change, but do we want that? I mean,
so I think the answer is we definitely want that because we want the leaders to stay listening and to be attached to the ground and to listen to the people all the time, not just once every 4 years.
But can it be claimed that he's listening to the people that voted him in just 4 months ago? And he's saying, these people chose me. If I give in to this protest that's outside of my house, these 30,000, 100,000, 500,000 people are outside of my house demanding that 4 months ago,
1.3 million people.
1.3 million people said, I want Bibi. So am I going to shut my ears to them and listen to these 500,000?
Okay, so there are many things to say to that. One is that he didn't actually get a majority. The majority of people, I think 62 of the 120 seats that were voted in were actually anti-Bibi.
That's irrelevant. He formed the government.
It's not
System,
it's not irrelevant if we're asking for what the people wanted.
In our system, if you have 61 who vote for your government, you're the prime minister. And
it is a little legitimate claim maybe that the system should be changed, just like in the United States where Hillary won the popular vote. But to Naor's point is we're playing a game. You can't at the end of the game say, but if the rules were different, you would have lost.
Yeah, but that's not what we're saying. We're saying now you have you have mismanaged our country. Now, since you've won, you've mismanaged Corona, you've gone into trials, you are you're asking for tax money when people are hungry, you're detached from the people. And another point to the system is that we are a parliament. There's a difference between a presidential democracy and a parliamentary, when they're the prime minister. And so in Israel, the parliament, the Knesset, has a right to oust the prime minister at any time, right? That's Chok Yesod. That's part of the very basic legislation.
Yeah.
How is the parliament supposed to know what the people want if we don't protest?
No,
would that be legitimate in your mind if the parliament went into tried to take down the government because of the protests?
If you were demonstrating in front of Gantz's house, I would understand. Because he is the one who allegedly betrayed so many voters of him who are probably demonstrating. No, but you can't compare, obviously.
No, he's not indicted for corruption.
No, but he's not prime minister.
Yeah, he's not prime minister at the moment.
But he gave, because of him, Bibi is the prime minister right now.
Yeah, but you protest against the king. Not his
Well,
sidekick.
that's if you're going like that with your head in the wall. But if you're smart and you really want change, then you're being strategic about it, and you say, okay, this is the guy who actually betrayed us. So, and he has the power also now to quit the government. That's Gantz, because Bibi will never quit. He will never quit.
So why not protest Gantz?
I'm not being strategic.
Here, we can close the podcast. That's far.
No.
So you learned nothing from 2011.
No.
That's the point.
No.
Because this is
No.
why you'll fail, I feel.
Okay, so that triggers a lot of things in me.
We're all ears.
I think
Yeah,
he
yeah.
means, just to clarify, this is why the protest, not you specifically. The protest will fail.
That triggers this as much. That's this movement that I'm a part of started a month ago. A month. It's really young. It's just starting. I think the expectation, and this comes every time something changes, the old establishment and the power will try and put us in a box. So what are your demands? Who is your party affiliation? What is the political outcome of this? They want to put us in these boxes that make sense to them, and then they can also squash the protest. This is not what's happening. There is chaos in the world right now. We're seeing new levels of instability everywhere. I think it would be Yahir, it would be arrogant of me to presume to know what's going to happen a month from now. Because let's be honest, a month from now, we can be in lockdown. There might be a war because we're Israel and summer is when wars happen. There could be elections because that's a real definite, an option. And there could be 50,000 people on the streets. All of these options are just as likely to happen as I understand it. So I feel that being tactical in the sense of how do I bring down this government, that's not what I'm about. There's a bigger thing happening here. And it's something that I feel that you guys might also be a part of. So I really invite you to put aside the anti-Bibi and hear my invitation.
Okay. So what's the bigger thing? Try to explain. You started to talk about it in your second point earlier.
Yeah.
Elaborate a bit more and then we can
Thank
talk
you.
about it.
Thank you. The divide and conquer, the way that if it's neo-capitalism, if it's political parties, if it's like in Israel, your political stance is basically kind of determined by if you like Arabs or hate Arabs, which in any other country would be foreign policy. Like there's so many things in our power structure that don't make sense in my mind, and I feel that they don't work for us. They don't work for the young people in this country. Like I feel that there are things that we could agree on in the sense of economy, in the sense of welfare.
Like, for example?
Like, for example, that if someone has paid their taxes all their life and has put a lot of money in the national pot, then when their business goes under, the government should be there for them. If they close them, no, you're not there.
No, not because I don't think that it's awful that, I don't know, we don't get that money back in a way. I just think that any money I give to the government, I say bye to. I say bye-bye.
And
I don't
Zero
expect it back.
expectations.
Yeah, but you guys, why do we deserve to live in a place where we have zero expectations of our leaders? Why don't we deserve to have
I'd be
leaders we
with
can
you.
be proud of?
I'd be with you if you were on the streets saying, let's get rid of taxes because you guys are not giving us our money back. If you were there saying, you're not giving us our money when you promised to give it to us. You said there's this thing called Social Security.
So I'm gonna
lied to us.
I'm gonna invite you guys again to not stick to one point like the taxes, but like the bigger picture. And I understand why this can be frustrating, and I understand why people feel that it's like 2011, it's unclear, and this is why it's going to disappear. And yet, as someone who has devoted the past month of her life basically to this movement, it's decentralized, which is new. That's never happened in Israel. That we have 30,000 people on the streets and no stage, no one giving speeches, no one person taking political power. That's unheard of. 2011, we had faces, we had Daphne, we had Stav, we had really clear people. And a lesson I've learned from that is that, the Minister of Welfare at the moment in Bibi's government is Itzik Shmuli, who was on the streets with me.
So maybe you'll be a minister in Bibi's government 10 years from now.
I will not. And I chose not to go that path last time I was in that situation. And this is
And
part of
that-
this is
okay.
part of the learnings, okay? So we're not letting the leaders, and there are incredible leaders right now. Seriously, I'm in awe of the young people that I meet. They're not looking for the fame. They're not looking to be nice, right? The mainstream keeps telling us, be nice, go home at 11, don't make noise for the neighbors, don't disturb the public peace. That's how you get the mainstream on your side. And we have been saying again and again and proving it, we're not trying to get the mainstream on our side. We're not trying to be nice. We're trying to be authentic. It's decentralized. It's not a policed environment.
But you talk about technicalities. What do you want? Let's go back to that. So you said taxes,
The
okay.
bigger picture.
Yeah.
The bigger picture is about a different type of government. It's about a different type of leadership. It's about morality. It's about different populations coming together. So one thing that's been happening in the past month, and again, you're asking me for very clear and concise demands. 1 month is not enough for a movement to consolidate and understand itself. And I'm letting my movement have its time to understand ourselves.
How do you want me to join if I can't understand
Okay.
what I should join to?
I love that question. Thank you for that. So, any message that is not violent, racist, or inciting violence is welcome in our space. So if you want to come and...
Some of those are subjective, but okay.
Yeah, they are subjective. And yet, anything that doesn't come under these threes of violence, incitement, or racism is welcome. So you guys can come with any message that you want. For the first time in Israel, this has never happened before. Side by side, we are living different messages. And each of us needs to leave their comfort zone in order to accept the other. We have seen more and more Ethiopian Israelis coming to protest police brutality. Do you know how hard it is for them to come and stand in one space with people demanding justice for Iyad al-Khalak, a Palestinian? Do you understand the consciousness shift that they need to make? Ethiopian Israelis come traditionally from very right-wing families to be seen as anti-right or to be seen as something that even resembles left-wing is very, very difficult. They receive a lot of fire from their own people. So all of us need to change. And this is the bigger picture. This is what I'm inviting you into. It's a space to have conversation, to bring your opinions.
But at the end, sorry, I interrupted.
I've been speaking for a while, so I think it's
But
fair.
in the end, there needs to be an outcome, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so what's the desired outcome?
So the first
give me
desired
not
outcome-
even just one. Yeah, exactly. Give
Okay.
me. Sorry, there doesn't need to be a single one. You can give me just one, but any desired outcome.
Great. I have quite a few. Speaking for myself, because there's no spokesperson here. A desired outcome is for the Likud party to pick another leader. A desired outcome is for I see.
You should join the Likud
Yeah.
as a member.
This is not what I'm pushing for. It's something that I wish would happen. I wish for.
I have a friend who votes merits usually, and he's a member of the Likud.
Yeah.
Which
Don't
I
say
just
his
find
name because he'll be
I know,
expelled.
Yeah,
but I won't.
the
but-
Trojan horse of
Yeah.
of inside the
So-
Likud.
so-
I don't do those things because I
Okay.
don't play party politics because that's not where I find faith and hope.
70% just elected Bibi as...
How do you get to those figures of 70%?
no, in the Likud.
In
you
the
had
Likud.
primaries for the leader.
Of
and
course.
2 months, 3 months ago.
Yeah, because
I know because I worked for Bibi in the primaries. And yeah, let's put it out there. I worked in all the campaigns, in all of Bibi's campaigns.
great to know halfway through the
yeah.
interview. Well done, you guys. Thanks for giving me the heads up.
Well, if you
No, but-
Googled, if
but
you
you
did your
knew.
research.
You knew where we stand politically.
I do, and you guys were really wonderful and nice about preparing me for coming to
But-
have a good conversation.
But you know, this to me, it's so it's rude. You have lots of chutzpah to come to the Likud, which is a democratic party, and 70% just elected Bibi a few months ago, and tell them that you are demonstrating for another leader.
Okay, so you asked me
to spit in their faces.
So
to be blunt.
you asked me to say a few things. I started, and you immediately cut me off.
I'm sorry.
To your point,
She does
I
have
will.
a point.
To your point, I'm not protesting the Likud. I'm saying that one of the outcomes that I would feel very happy with is if the right wing remained in power but had an uncorrupt leader. For that example, I feel that Bennett, right? Naftali Bennett is very far from my opinions, but he seems a kind of honest guy to me. He seems like a real dude. So for me, that would be a good outcome, not the best, but an acceptable one. Some more outcomes. For me, the most important thing is for more communities to come together. When the Ethiopian Jews that have been, there's so many different communities here that the regime has been, just going down on, if it's the Haredim, if it's the 20% of Arab Israelis or Palestinians living in Israel that live here, 20% that are completely having racism against them all the time, if it's the ultra-Orthodox, the Haredim, that have incredible police violence done against them. Like, if these populations that have the regime bear down on them start coming together and create some sort of conversation between them, create an infrastructure for a true civil uprising, for a true civil communication, a network. That is my main hope. And another small idea, what about, how do you say machash in English?
The police that investigates the police.
Yeah, so that's my problem. The
Internal affairs.
Yeah,
so the police that investigate police are a joke in Israel. They do nothing well. They have never really held anyone accountable. This is very well documented. A very, very short-term goal for me could be to take the internal investigations of the police and put them in an outside body. Can we have an outside body that actually looks at what police does and police violence?
Sure.
And the shooting and the killings of black Israeli men in the streets, that has been 6 men have been killed in the past few years.
There's lots of things that you're like police reform. I think I don't know too much about the statistics here in Israel. I know that generally when police brutality is talked about, then I mean, it's exaggerated, but I don't know much about
Israeli police brutality. It's like a walk in the park in the New York Police Department or Chicago Police Department.
I have some Ethiopian friends who would really not agree, who have. I seriously, I'm sorry, you guys, but I feel.
First of all,
no, wait.
Okay.
I feel that you guys are not taking this seriously enough. I feel that there's hundreds of thousands of people here that are black, and that their life experience as teenagers is getting beat up by cops for no reason.
Hundreds of thousands of Ethiopians were beat up by cops.
No. 100,000 Ethiopians in Israel. Teenagers, many of them, maybe even most of them, yes, they have very bad experience from harassment to getting beat up. 6 men were shot, 6 civilians that didn't have any weapons on them and had no malicious intent were killed by police officers in the past few years. Guys, you can't downplay that.
I'm just saying that relative to police brutality in America, that's not because when people in America hear police brutality in Israel, they imagine their statistics in America,
okay. So both of you are missing my point. Okay. I think that in general, the police brutality claim is over exaggerated. Even here, I don't know the statistics here in Israel. In the States, I know it, and I think you're over exaggerating it. Police brutality in the States is not an issue for the black.
Can you
community.
agree that it's ridiculous that they investigate themselves?
They don't investigate themselves.
No, but that's
internal affairs.
Internal affairs belongs.
It's internal.
But they belong to the Attorney General. Technically,
they sit with the police in the same buildings. They're their
that's
friends.
Different, but official.
They're part of it.
They come from the police.
How is it?
But technically, they're entirely different management. But yeah, I'm perfectly fine with better. Internal affairs.
Oversight,
yeah, I don't care about that.
So I think accountability for the police is important. I think, honestly, I want more policing in Israel. And that's
in some communities, I agree.
That's one of my biggest problems. I think that we need better police and more of it in more places, especially the weaker, poorer place, because I think that generally you'll find in low socioeconomic levels there's higher crime rates, and the good people in those communities want police to protect them, and I think that like a healthy society should push for that. And if we could talk about police reform, but I feel like there's a lot that we could talk about, and maybe but I just don't understand this this movement thing. This, right? You keep calling it the movement. There's
Yeah.
so many different things that you want to talk about, and there's so many communities. It sounds like Israel. I mean, like that's what Israel is. That's what a democracy is. It's like a bunch of people living together, talking together, and then protesting, and then voting. In the end, making a decision. Each person makes a decision based on what they think is most important. So, like, I don't understand this idea of gathering in the streets, because if the idea is to make political change, then again, I really think that that's trying to override the system that's in place. But if it's just to get people together,
I'm definitely trying to override the system that's in place.
With what?
With good willing people that want to come together and create a better system.
What does it mean?
It means that you should come to the streets and speak to people and create something that you feel represents you. I want to ask you guys a question. How does it make you guys feel that your prime minister has 3 indictments against him, that is fighting for his tax return?
We both voted for him.
I understand that. No, I understand. And that's why I'm asking.
Might not vote again for him, though.
Why?
Because of Corona.
Why? What happened there?
I don't like the way that he's been dealing with it.
And what about the way that his son handles himself? And we know...
I'm not going to vote for a guy because of his son.
But can we agree on the fact that his son and wife are heavily, heavily involved in his regime?
I don't know.
Not more than other wives and sons.
No, maybe.
Seriously.
But I don't know
Okay.
if it matters.
And how do you feel about the fact that he, while he was not preparing for a second wave because he handled Corona really bad, what do you feel about him going and asking for a 1 million shekel tax
That's
exemption?
a technicality. It's a technical issue.
You don't feel that's being obtuse? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you
I don't
not
know. I
feel-
don't know enough about it.
I don't like it, but I mean,
Do you
it's not. It's
you
not.
feel
it's
that the
not
system
the
works
highest
for you?
priority for me. Yeah,
The system, like again,
I think the system works not just for me though, because I know that's a trick question. I think it doesn't work just for me. I think it works for everybody. I
All
think it
in
works for
all-
people who opt into the system. I think it works for the most part.
would we be happier maybe with the presidential system? Maybe here in Israel, like maybe I don't know. We can talk about it, but all in all, I think the most deepest disagreement between us, the deepest disagreement between us is about how we see current life and our future. Like I think me and Eytan, we're very happy with our lives in Israel. We feel we have a future. We feel that all the people I know around me have good lives and good futures. And so I completely, I think if so, here in Israel,
do you feel that you guys might be like a bit better off than some people? Do you feel
No.
that there are communities?
Yeah.
no,
Well,
no.
come on, you're not better off than anybody.
I mean, what's better? Yeah, I mean, but what she asks is, I mean, everyone is better off than anyone else. But
No,
the point
I think
is,
you
I think,
as white Jewish men
you go.
in Israel, are you not better off than
I think
Palestinians living in Israel, than
No, I as-
Ethiopians,
I as
than
a-
ultra-Orthodox living
Yeah.
in poverty? Do you not feel that you're better off than them?
I as Eitan Weinstein am better off than other people. I don't think it's productive
but because you
or
worked hard, you
no,
built
no,
yourself.
but I don't think it's
Privilege doesn't play a
No.
part, you guys?
I don't believe in this word.
Seriously.
I don't recognize the word privilege. No,
Really?
because I don't think there's any difference between an Ethiopian guy today who came to Israel 20 years ago and my grandfather who came here 40 years ago.
Yeah, okay.
You're
Not your grandfather, so
So-
your
Wait,
but
situation
there's
is different.
people
Yeah,
out
but
there
my
that
situation
are-
is different only because my grandparents and my parents worked really, really hard.
Right, which makes you privileged,
No,
someone who just came
no,
here.
which makes me someone who was born to people who worked hard. And if these theoretical Ethiopian guy works hard, then his kids will also have good lives. And so I don't think it has anything to do with a privilege.
What like give the spiel.
You know what, you guys?
Yeah.
I don't feel like I need to, like the activist in me wants to ask questions like, do you have any like Ethiopian friends that you could ask? And like, how much are we actually involved in our lives with like Arab people or different minorities or different groups here that are not white Jewish? Because I know that I'm very privileged. I grew up in a privileged environment. But I feel that this is taking us to like a different place.
I
And-
think that's at the very center of it. I would be very happy to hear about your thoughts on this because I think it really is at the core.
I don't think it's at the core. I think what's at the core is an awakening. And I think that if we put all the other things aside, I feel that me and my friends and the young people here have been depressed and sad and not seeing a future for themselves for a very long time. Many people I know have moved away. I've considered it. I've considered, could I make a home for myself elsewhere? Because my friends get beaten up on the street for being left-wing. And the Prime Minister has made the word left-wing a curse word. Like the hate-mongering here is getting...
People made it curse word.
You don't think that Bibi had a part in hate-mongering?
No, I don't think so. Hate-mongering? No. I don't think so.
No hate-mongering.
No,
No, 3 elections, they were chill. They were all just legit. There was no hate-mongering there.
They were pretty legit, in my opinion.
You don't feel that there's a delegitimization of anything to do with left-wing, anything to do with...
I feel there's a delegitimization, oh my God, of many things that are right-wing. Like if you want, like you said, that it's all that in your protests you have place for everything that's non-violent.
Yeah.
So first of all, to me, holding a sign, Ayman Uda for Prime Minister is violent. So
that's violent?
To me, yes. Yes. To me, it's violent.
Why?
To say that a representative in the legislature...
Because this party doesn't want me here. So if they are in their leadership...
There was a sign on the Prime Minister's house last week saying leftists are traitors and they don't want you here?
I think that's also condemn.
Yeah.
Anybody with the right mind should condemn that.
Yeah. But the point is, so what I'm saying, like I said before, it's very subjective. And on the other hand, if I want to protest against 40,000 Eritreans who live here and they came here illegally and I want them out of here, that would be considered by your friends as violent and racist maybe. And then I wouldn't be able to join your... So I think...
I accept your point.
You know what's legitimate and what's not legitimate.
I think she said you're not invited.
No, you're very much invited. Like there's a beautiful story that happened last week that I saw someone post. She a right-wing woman. There's more and more right-wingers in our protests. We see them every week. We talk to them. We embrace them. There's a right-wing woman that came and she posted something that really touched me. She said that her aging father came along with her. And he said to her, like, this is not at all what they're saying in the news. Like, Bibi has called these people aliens. Sarah, his wife, has said that they're drug addicts and, like, violent anarchists. That's not what I'm seeing. And she's like, yeah, Dad, it's like a space for free speech. And then she looks at him and she says, what's important to you? And he says, keeping the Shabbat is important to me. And she says, yeah, I like that. And he says, keep the Shabbat. And she's, keep the Shabbat. And they were standing there for a while, just kind of bringing their voice and saying, keep the Shabbat, lishmor et Shabbat v'mitzvotav, lishmor et Shabbat. And I thought that was incredible. And there is no one around there that's going to devalue that message.
Yes, but if people who are for deportation of Eritreans were to join they would be probably beat up or I don't know what would happen to them, but they wouldn't be able to join you.
So there's...
Be realistic.
Okay, so I take issue with you saying that they would be beat up because we have not...
They would be expelled.
No, but that's not... I'm sorry. I'm not going to allow you to do that because you're trying to make some sort of symmetry between the fact that we get beat up and stabbed weekly for being non-violent and the concept of a right-winger coming and getting beat up in our protest. That has not happened. And inshallah, I hope it won't happen. So I take offense to that symmetry. The other part of that is that I think saying deport Eritreans is a racist remark. I think for you to come and say something like, we want more security in our neighborhoods and asylum seekers who don't get asylum should not be allowed to be left in Israel, I don't agree with that, but I would fight for your right to say it.
Amen. No, I'm on board for that.
So what's the difference? Like, because I use the word Eritreans and not asylum seekers?
Yeah, because there's not just Eritreans. There are other asylum seekers.
Yeah, it's just 90% of them are Eritreans as of now. So this is why I use the word. But
I think being racist is putting it on a race. If you make your
I'm for
issue,
any illegal immigrant to be deported, not just the Eritreans.
I severely disagree with you, but I respect your right to feel that way.
Okay, but I don't think I have a place in your demonstrations with such a claim. That's how I feel. But maybe it's just
But I
me.
think free speech needs to go further than that. I think you need to be comfortable with people saying racist stuff. I don't get the whole insightful
I should be
stuff.
comfortable with people saying racist
Not
stuff?
comfortable, but you should fight for their right to say it.
Hell no.
That's what radical free speech is about. Is saying that it does, like, because that it gets blurry. You know, I mean, like,
I don't think racism is blurry. I think racism is a very clear line that needs to be upheld.
But to
That's
some
part of my
people-
core
but
value.
it doesn't. But you don't think it's blurry because you decide where the line is. But someone else might decide it somewhere else.
And then we might have a conversation about it, and then they can
but
protest.
you can't have a conversation if you don't allow them to say it.
But as I just said, like, it's okay to come, and if you phrase the message in a non-racist way, I will accept
But
it.
someone else won't.
If it-
Someone else would say even your non-racist way to phrase it is racist, and they would be angry.
I definitely agree that is an option. There are many things in that space that make me angry. Personally, I can tell you that I feel, for example, this is my own personal experience. I feel very uncomfortable around the Israeli flag. Israeli flag for me has become very attached to wars and to nationalism and to growing fascism in my country. And for many decades now, I found it very hard. And I grew up in a very Zionistic household. We used to have the flag out everywhere. And I've been coming for a month to a space where dozens of Israeli flags are everywhere. Does that make me uncomfortable? Yes. Does it mean that I won't come out to say what I need to say? No. That's part of the concept of, and this goes back to your earlier point, which I agreed with, that there are many, many really, really deep and valuable conversation points and many things that people want to say that at the moment we can't hear each other. There's no discourse, there's no dialogue because of our hate-mongering politicians from all sides.
So I want to get back just to that because we have a few more minutes.
All right.
Why?
No, it was just
you going
'cause it's-
anywhere?
No. Don't we have?
It's coming at
okay,
8.
That's right. Sorry.
Our
never
next
mind.
guest. Back to
Confused.
back. We're doing back to back.
Confusion. Let's do
Oh
another
my God,
half hour
you
of
have
this.
other guests other than me?
Yeah,
I
we're
know,
betraying
I know.
you.
Oh my God.
I
With
know.
other guests.
It's not okay.
But
But actually, I'm enjoying this, so I'm happy to go on.
Okay,
for how
so
long.
about that, on that note, because earlier you also said it's not about I don't want Bibi, I don't want guns, and you said like that in 2011 the leaders went to politics, and now we have no leaders, so there's no one to go to politics, and that's how all these things together. That's also a point that disturbs me. To me, the most effective and the only effective way to change things in a democracy is by elections and politics. That's my perspective, my point of view.
You really believe in the system?
I mean, I believe there is no alternative to the system, and you got to play the
disagree.
game. Okay,
I
fair enough.
completely disagree.
But to me, this is why you'll fail, because to make an actual change. And I think that's what Shmuley and Stav Shafir, they understood, and they were
and our
smart.
life is so much better because they're now politicians.
Because they're bad politicians. But like if you don't like Gantz and you don't like Bibi and you don't like Lapid and you don't, so bring someone who you like, who will do the work.
So I'm feeling that you're trying to bring me into your paradigm, and as someone who has worked different elections and feel that the system works for him and feels that he has a good life and has been a part of that system, I understand why you buy into that, and I respect that. I don't buy into it. I feel that it's a corrupt system in the depth of it. Bibi is very corrupt himself, but the system... Allegedly. There's things we know that he's corrupt in. He has accepted bracelets and champagne and cigars. For me, that's corruption, even if the bigger cases of immense corruption don't turn out to be, don't come into to court, which they will, but put that aside.
So the system is corrupt.
There is, again and again, every time there's a young, new force of change comes into action, there will be politicians, there will be people who the system serves very well, like yourself, my friend. There will be old people, much older than us, sitting in TV newsrooms saying, what are their demands? We don't understand them. What is your clear cut? What is the political agenda here? I refuse to play that game. I refuse to let people put me in a box by asking me a month into this movement. It's still a young movement. I refuse to try and to sate these people by giving them easy answers that they can comprehend. Complexity of the world we're living in is so much bigger than that. As we agreed before, the three of us, we don't know what's going to happen in a month. The level of chaos that the world is experiencing at the moment is so disorienting that any level of thinking, we need to change the way the leadership works. We need to change the way politics
if
works.
not by elections?
No, but to me that's a dangerous route, because the human endeavor is to make order out of chaos, and we should strive to do that, because you look 2,000 years ago, there was less order, there was much more chaos, things were shitty, right? Christ was crucified, people were burned on the side of roads. Like, it was not a fun time to live in.
Yeah.
So I think it's our job as humans, as a human race, to make order out of chaos. And so if you want change, you have to have a direction. Otherwise, we're heading
and
into
play the game
chaos.
and play the game that you despise so much, because that's the only game there is. When you say when you say I don't play this game, I don't believe in the system, that's when they say anarchism. To me, that's exactly it.
That's where we got to, the anarchists.
No, but I'm saying it seems to me it is back to what I was asking is, like, if you don't have, if you refuse to be boxed in, then
we have directions. Okay. We have very clear directions. One of the directions is Bibi needs to go home. A corrupt leader with 3 indictments against him cannot lead us. That's one very clear, very obvious.
But address the game issue that you refuse to play. What's your alternative to the system, the game?
So one thing that's important to say is that when I say I refuse to play the game, I'm speaking as Maya. My movement, my change doesn't come through party politics, but comes through broader social change happening with shift of consciousness. That does not mean that there aren't other people in this movement that are working towards a party answer. Like, I don't do that, but other people completely are considering, how does this translate into a political force? I feel that the game is so rigged and so crooked and corrupt that it really doesn't matter. And my point in this conversation is always, I feel Barack Obama was quite a good dude. I feel that he was legitimately, his heart was in the right place. He was president for 8 years. Did the situation of Black African Americans improved?
No,
it worsened. I feel that.
So he failed.
I don't think. I think that you trying to minimize and saying that it's his fault, or that's a bad politician, or that is a bad strategy. I feel that that's not acknowledging the bigger picture, that the game is rigged. The system is corrupt. It's ruled by money and power.
What other system do you have? What other game there is?
Okay, so I'll repeat again that there are other people that are working towards finding political outlets to this protest movement. I don't want to devalue that in any way. And the second thing I'll say about that is that I don't feel comfortable creating a list of demands or being very, very specific about what the outcome needs to be while this movement is still forming, in the sense that I do feel that ultra-Orthodox needs and demands need to be a part of this platform, as do the 20% of Arabs living in this country that suffer immense racism and aren't legitimate in many, many public spaces, as the Ethiopians and as others. And while this movement is coming together and while these things are being built, I feel that trying to push forward what's it going to look like is just a demand I'm not willing to work with. And I understand that that's frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like, we're going in circles. Like, we reached a dead end.
Let me give you some pieces of hope that I see. Okay? Some of the things, the really beautiful, hopeful things that I see is, people speaking. We are having this conversation. We have never had this conversation. So this discourse makes me think about things differently, and maybe you guys as well. And this is the kind of political conversations that haven't been happening in our country for a very long time, in my feeling. That's one. The second is different communities that are coming together to speak about what they need. It gives space for many, many things to come out, and then communications and different things, and civil society can be formed. For me, the infrastructure of civil society is the answer. Not waiting for our leaders, for the right hero to come out, but to be the people we have been waiting for. This is truly what I believe in. We are the people, and my work as a facilitator, my work in the art of hosting, in participatory leadership, is all about this. It's how do we self-organize? How do we work with collective intelligence? That's why the voices and the diversity needs to come in. Other pieces of hope are situations, beautiful situations on the street, where my friend last night got arrested, and then in the police station, the officer, when he was off record, said to him, "Dude, thank you so much for what you're doing. Like, my brother just lost his business and we fully support. My wife and child go to the protest. So, like, right on." And these little points of coming together, and the fact that we are decentralized, there are no stages. Again, tell me one time where there have been 30,000 people on the streets without party politics and without a main stage and speakers to come see a band play or something like this. And then the last but most beautiful thing for me is just seeing people bring out their signs, bring themselves, and dare to hope. I personally, and many people that I know, truly have not dared to hope that this place can change in a very long while. And that's what we're saying. We're ready to wake.
Okay, I hope that we see a brighter future. I think we can agree on that.
Inshallah.
We should always fight to find common ground. So I think that we can agree on. I'm not sure we agree on
And
the direction.
Pizza is tasty. Can I agree
Pizza's
on that?
tasty.
Definitely.
Okay.
Pizza's
Yeah.
yummy.
Yeah, but my stomach wouldn't agree. But yeah. So I do hope we see a brighter future, and whatever the way is, that, you know, the outcome is good.
I hope so too. I don't think that it's going to be easier soon. I think that it's going to get much worse before it gets any better. I think that the waves of poverty and violence that are coming upon us are going to be painful. We're going to lose a lot of people in many different ways, if it's for illness or for violence on the street. I'm 37. I've never been scared to walk to my car from the public square. Friends walk me from each protest to my car because I'm scared of being attacked, because people are being attacked on the streets. Situation is deteriorating, you guys.
Yeah, the violence is just unacceptable. I mean, and I don't mean to make any comparisons or equivocations or whatever, but I mean, whatever side it's on, it's right against left, left against right, wherever there's violence, it obviously needs to be. And I even concede that maybe there's more violence from the right to the left.
Maybe,
yeah. I really don't. I'm not informed enough to say it, but it seems like with the stabbing and the attacks that were in Tel Aviv after the demonstration in front
and
of
in Jerusalem,
Amir Ohana, right?
And in
So it seems
all over the country.
like the violence really is targeting these protests, and it's absolutely unacceptable. And I think that that's clear to anybody who has their head on right, that violence is no answer.
When people call us anti-Zionist anarchists, it makes me smile sometimes, because a lot of our protests or when it gets difficult, and when we get beat up by cops, or when we get hosed in a very severe way, or when, you know, mobs of football hooligans run us down in the street, we sing Gesher Tzar Meod. And one of the verse or the chorus is והעיקר לא לפחד כלל. And what's the main thing that's important is not to have fear at all. And this is the difference that we're seeing. The movement that I'm part of, the Pink Bandanas of Israel, that have risen in the past month, are fierce, loving, open, and fierce. When we were stabbed in the street, the protest numbers doubled themselves. We're not scared. We're in this for the long haul. We want change. We want peaceful, good change. We want intelligent, good people like yourselves with us in order to create change that's relevant for not just the base or whatever political imaginary line runs between us. That's an invitation, you guys.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
Before we go, we have a collaboration with the Jewish Journal. Check them out at jewishjournal.com.
Yes.
Also,
IsraelNationalNews.com. Sheva, we have a collaboration with them. Check them out. IsraelNationalNews.com
and Australian Jewish News, ajn.timesofisrael.com. Highly recommended.
Yes.
Also, we accept donations, so please help us out. Go to twinjuby.com/donate and donate, please.
Please.
And that is it.
And
Thank
you can
you.
also go to my website.
Yes,
It's www.mayaremer. That's MAYARIMER.com. I'm a facilitator and I do all types of things online as well. So
Guys, reach out.
Organizations.
We'll add the link also in the post. And
And
reach
also
out to
via
Maya.
Zoom, I guess you can
yeah,
operate.
do a lot of work through Zoom and through other platforms.
Relevant for
Yeah.
Americans.
Nowadays, anything can be done from anywhere.
It's a way.
Well.
Thank you
Almost.
guys for having me.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
guys.